So at this point now, I want to get us set up and prepped for our speaker, who will start at 2:05, and that will be Robert Dougherty, and he will be talking with us about knowledge management. He is from the University of Southern California. So Robert, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you so you can get set up, and thank you so much.
All right, thanks so much, Deborah. I think we're probably good to go, but let me get set up real quick. Can everyone see this okay? Can someone confirm?
Yes, looks great.
Awesome. All right, well, I guess we'll just get started early, so we have time for the next speaker. Hello, EDUCAUSE community. I'm here to speak with you all today about knowledge management and the journey that USC is beginning to integrate that knowledge management into our larger IT service management program. So just as an introduction for myself, my name is Robert Dougherty. I work as a knowledge management analyst at USC's Information Technology Services. My primary role for the past few years has been the manager of our knowledge-centered services program in the customer support department. And it's been going strong there for more than 4 years now. But in recent months, I've been taking on a new role as our interim knowledge process manager to build out a knowledge management practice for the unit. So we've had, pockets of knowledge success, like knowledge-centered services, but nothing that's across the entire org or well integrated into a program. So we recently concluded a multifunctional task team effort to identify an enterprise knowledge strategy and approach for the unit. So that actually sprung from a different initiative that we had, which was a metrics program. So we're trying to shore up the way we do metrics and reporting and making sure that we meet our service level agreements. And so lots of people were having questions about how can we improve in these metrics. And so one of those areas that was identified was knowledge management. And so, we looked around in the industry and we do see, we have this quote here in the middle here from, Gartner and ISO calling knowledge management, one of the most important assets and a key differentiator for an IT organization. And so at the conclusion of this task team, we came up with an approach, pitched it to our senior leadership, and it has since been greenlit. Now we're transitioning that approach to the department's service management program, and then also formalizing the rollout via our project management office to just carry out that actual approach. So we are starting from the ground up here. If we really had to put a score on our knowledge maturity throughout the organization, it would be, if it's 1 to 5, we're probably around a 1 or 2 maybe. And so there's no central knowledge repository other than something like ServiceNow, but use across that across the organization is very sporadic. There's isolated best practices within different groups, and there's no real governance over knowledge itself. And so we're really trying to solve for the lowest the minimum problem that we can solve here, and we're limited by lots of different things about like budget and staffing. And so we're trying to start small here. So we're taking a programmatic approach, integrating into ITSM. We're asking all of our departments to take small steps, and then we'll get engagement as we move forward. So this is an outline of the key activities that the projects that we're going to be instituting are going to move through. And really what we tried to do is define what are the minimum activities to meet the core functionality of knowledge management. So if you do any research into knowledge management, what you're really trying to do is get the right knowledge assets to the right individuals at the right time, at the right access, right? And so the two problems we're trying to really solve here is discoverability. and then also the creation of knowledge. So if we walk through this diagram here, these are the key activities that most of the groups are going to be going through. First, we need to actually figure out what knowledge we have, right? Then what we need to do is categorize that knowledge so we even know what we're dealing with, and that we can then see if it's in its appropriate location and if the appropriate people can get to it. Next up, you just create an actual knowledge map. So you would have an actual understanding of your current environment. And then you move on to the building phase, which is in gold here. So then we're going to be doing some standardization. So we're setting standards for ourselves about knowledge and what we should be creating in the future that we might not be creating now. So that's solving that first problem. And then building a system of tools that allows everyone who could need access to our knowledge to have it. So that's that discoverability problem. And then once you've built all that out, what we're going to be doing is then migrating that knowledge to its appropriate home, and then eventually creating a system of continuous improvement so that we can keep things healthy and eventually improve, going to future installations of things like insight engines to have unit-wide knowledge discovery instead of just in separate pockets. So how do you do this categorization? We came up with a typing system. So we looked out in the industry, and there isn't a whole lot of guidance. We even, had it. We've talked to Gartner. We tried to figure out, what's the best way to figure out, what buckets make the most sense for you, and what are you actually trying to solve, really, right? So if we're really trying to solve that discoverability problem, we had to just come up with our own typing system here. We even showed this to Gartner and the analysts we were working with. I thought it was pretty neat. So I thought I'd share it here with you guys. Really, what we tried to do is figure out what we really wanted here in terms of, we called it knowledge velocity. And so it's along the lines of, if it's something that's industry-wide that lots of people need access to and they need it immediately, that would be something like a type 1. Moving towards type 2s and type 3s. Those are more tool embedded knowledge. They're embedded more in teams. If you have a specific role, you might need access to that. And then type 4 is where, unfortunately, most things live, right? Those are the things that are on local endpoints, on people's password protected shared drives, and even just in their head, right? So that's that tacit knowledge that's really difficult to tease out of people and get people to share. And so a lot of what our approach is to move items from these higher types of type 4, type 3, move them closer to 1 and 2. And then eventually, if we get to type 0 in the future, it's probably going to be customer access for a lot of our knowledge. So again, we're solving for accessibility here. So really, we want to figure out where things are located, what their access structure is, and just awareness for folks that they know that it's there. So if we have something like at the end of our discovery period and we build out a new system, we'll have a knowledge map, and you can have a complete description of a group or a team's knowledge landscape, and so that people can immediately go and access that information as quickly as possible. So we did try different naming conventions here. We tried to call things fast or slow or hard to get, and things like that. But really, just in practice, what we found is having those kind of conventions is just too confusing for folks because they can interpret it in their own way. So what we really just did at this point was we typed them out here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and gave definitions for folks. Okay. So this is the phased approach that we've set out for our different departments. So we're really worried about acceptance and adoption here. So we're asking each leader in each area to at least start. And so we wanted to give them some key activities for them to do to start moving at their own pace. We don't even have necessarily them formalizing their project management office projects until they've completed some steps before that. So we really wanted the startup cost for folks to be relatively low and to get more buy-in, so that we're really trying to hit for adoption and acceptance rather than speed here. If something like knowledge management can definitely help out operations, but it's really like the infrastructure and the scaffolding that helps you improve all other areas of the IT organization. And so we weren't trying to do a big bang approach where we're trying to have 20 projects in parallel and everyone scrambling to get things done in 1 year. So this is just an example of some of the options we've been giving our leadership and our management. So we're asking each vertical to select a speed and then just giving everybody an end date in the future, which was going to be in 2022. Now we did launch this roadmap during the pandemic, and so maybe that 2022 marker for everyone isn't as realistic as it was 10 months ago. But we are at least trying to give everybody a hard deadline at the end, but then giving people the ability to move as quickly as they want. And so we really wanted to lay a road for those who are excited and who are super pumped for this, and give them the resources and the support that they need to get started if they want to move quickly, but also lay out the road for those who may be hesitant and they might not have the resources. With the pandemic, financials and budgets are constrained. And so we just wanted to make sure that there was a path for everybody here to make sure that we get that universal adoption. Okay, so like I mentioned, we started this off as a task team of a multifunctional group across the whole IT organization. And so this is that team came up with the approach. They came up with their recommendations, templates and resources, and then that was pitched to our senior leadership, and then that was approved. So then it's moved over into the IT service management program for oversight. And so me as the interim knowledge process manager, I'm the key contact point for the different sections that are going to comprise the actual program. And so on one hand, we have our enterprise project management office, which is actually going to be run by a program manager. And that person is going to be managing the actual projects as they move through their key activities that we discussed earlier. And then in parallel, what I'm going to be doing is setting up a knowledge user group, or what we're calling a champion network. And so we're going to hopefully have embedded knowledge champions within the different teams so that we can make sure we have team level, boots on the ground support, and people have a direct channel to get the best practices and support that they need. So that's how we transitioned from our task team down to the ITSM program, and then down to an actual IT knowledge management practice. So talking a little bit about this user group, what we're going to be forming here is we're calling it our Knowledge Champion Network. It's just going to provide a collaborative forum for its members. The network will provide that feedback loop to share knowledge management best practices, resources, and guidance to these champions, as well as provide a path to escalate issues or roadblocks back to the ITSM program. So like I mentioned before, how we're having everybody go at their own pace, we're going to be building out this network slowly as more teams and individuals move through the PMO projects. We didn't really want people to be sitting around in a knowledge champion network when they have literally started no knowledge work and maybe the project hasn't even launched. So we just want to make sure that we launch this at the appropriate time when we have kind of a critical mass of people who need these resources. And so how is this champion network going to be comprised? So we've identified 2 roles that we'd like to implement. One is the core champion, who will be like the point person and knowledge advocate within their specific vertical. So this person will attend the actual champion network forum. They'll be the one escalating issues to the knowledge practice and the ITSM program in general. And then as well as sharing out the information and resources to our second role, which is our team level champion. And so these they can have several team level champions, and this role will be an advocate at that team level, share information and best practices there, and then escalate any issues or roadblocks back to their core champions. So we really wanted to make sure that there was a clear line for folks to be able to escalate issues and have a point person to get their resources from. So we hope that by embedding the core champions at these levels, we can achieve engagement and adoption throughout the organization and just provide the proper connection points back to the service management program. So what's next for us? So currently at USC, like I mentioned, we've gotten approval from our leadership, which was the biggest selling point, although I'm sure a lot of you know a lot of the request for this practice was driven by leadership. And so getting their buy-in was not necessarily easy. We still had to pitch something that worked, but it was a little bit less of a ground or grassroots effort, and it was more top level. But so what we're doing is we're asking those leaders to select their own pace. We're giving them recommendations for resourcing, who would be the best people to put on these projects to help them move forward, thinking about people who know about the current knowledge landscape that each of their groups have, people who can envision a future state and a better knowledge approach and actually implement those and keep people accountable is really great. So we're currently actually running 2 pilot groups of those core activities that we talked about, and we're doing those activities and that approach to build up experience, best practices, resources, templates, artifacts, just things that we can give over to those projects as examples of excellence and just how different teams have tackled the problem. So we're still awaiting a formal kickoff of those projects, but we still have a lot of experience with running these pilots so far. And so if you guys have any questions about how those have gone, how the approaches played out so far, I'd be happy to answer those questions. So that's actually it for me. So I want to thank so much for everybody for inviting me to participate today. And if you'd like to connect, feel free to reach out to me. My email is just robert.doherty@usc.edu. I know we still have a little bit of time here at the end, so I don't know if there are actually questions in chat, but if maybe one of the moderators could help me out there, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, Robert, thank you so much. I mean, that really was a great practical approach that you shared with us around setting up a knowledge management practice. We do have 1 or 2 questions that are here, a couple of comments. The question that we have is, what are you doing for IT questions that could be answered by Google? For example, how to change your default browser. Would you still create an article in your knowledge base and point the user to the exact article on the vendor page? Would you write custom for your university? Or would you simply not create an article?
Yes, that's a great question. That's actually really down to context, right? So if we're talking specifically about our knowledge-centered services practice, we do have a way to surface knowledges externally to the customer, but usually we're not trying to create external knowledge based on no demand, right? So if there are things that are being answered by Google, we might not do that, but really we try to do it in an organic way where if our service desk is getting customer inquiries about a specific issue that might be able to be solved by Google, but guess what? They're coming to the service desk for those answers first. Internally, what happens is those articles get created. We have a pretty sophisticated way of tracking knowledge use, at least at the front lines and in the KCS structure. And so what we do then is we bubble up those based on usage. We do monthly reporting on new and evolving issues, and then so you start seeing that interaction with the knowledge at the service desk level and how many times folks are attaching those and those knowledge articles to incident records and things like that to show you their usage. And then you start considering, hey, this is something that's probably been formatted something for internally, but then you might surface that externally, and could still be something that points directly to another a help article somewhere else. Maybe, I mean, I know we have had several articles that point to other universities to solve specific tech problems. And so really what we try to do as far as the knowledge centered services is concerned, is we're really trying to have knowledge that's sufficient to solve the problem. And that might mean pointing directly to some other page somewhere else on Google.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is who handles the knowledge article? Oh, I'm sorry. A third question came in. The second question we have is, do you let any licensed user create a knowledge base article? Does it have to go through an approval process, or is everyone able to publish a knowledge base article?
So we have two knowledge bases within our ServiceNow instance. We have one that's internal to ITIL licensed users, and then we have an external one that's visible to customers as well. And so what we do is we train folks up in the KCS program to be able to publish as often as they'd like in the internal knowledge base. So there's no review there. All we're really doing is we have a mechanism for those articles to expire, and we've really just co-opted that feature for us to be able to review and look for duplicates. So we have a whole structure around giving people the training up front to create knowledge articles, and then a protracted coaching structure to let them to give them feedback on how they're creating articles. So in the internal knowledge base, they're free to publish as much as they'd like.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is, who handles the knowledge article feedback? Is it the person who created the KB article, the person who owns the service, a centralized knowledge curator?
Yeah, so we do have we have two knowledge management analysts, and what we do is there's a feedback system for those articles. What happens is if the feedback is concise and understandable, what we'll do is we'll actually directly make those edits without consulting the article's author. Knowledge centered services really preaches that, once you publish an article that goes into the system, it's not really yours anymore. You're just the author to be a person of a subject matter expert, right? So if the feedback that we're getting on an article is more complicated than we can easily insert or edit or delete things, then we will go and start a collaboration with the feedback provider, the author, and then we'll facilitate that as the knowledge management analysts.
Okay, awesome. So we have time for one more question.
Sure.
And that question is, how do you track how your knowledge bases are used on your service desk?
Yeah, so at the service desk, we use ServiceNow reporting. And so if anybody's in that world, there is a specific table that we're reporting off of that tells us knowledge uses and knowledge attaches to other records. And so we actually do monthly reporting on all of those metrics. So we know how many, down to a specific service desk analyst, we know how many articles they're viewing, how many they're attaching, and then we give them a participation score in the program based on those metrics. We're actually even, I know we're running short on time here, but we're actually trying to get into a new realm of figuring out if those attaches are actually accurate, so folks aren't just doing busy work and attaching things just for the sake of it. But so that's something we're exploring, but yeah, it's very exciting.
Yes, thank you, Robert. You have lots of kudos in the chat session, and the participants really thank you for answering the questions. We thank you very much. Very informative, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much.